Patrick Wong is the CEO of Tenacity, a Hong Kong-based investor and developer, which in the last couple of months has received planning permission for two new towers in the City of London, 70 Gracechurch Street, designed by KPF, and 55 Gracechurch Street by Fletcher Priest. Now, Patrick, some people might question your strategy of investing in central city sites at the present time, but from your experience in Hong Kong from SARS, you say, I don't believe that the era of the office is over. Can you tell me how you see the role of the office in the future?
I would say a few things. First of all, we invested into our two projects in London in like 2017 and 18. So this is all pre-COVID. And we spent about 3 years prior to 2017, like looking for the right projects. So we were very specific in terms of what we were looking for. And I think like every asset class, you go through cycles. And to me, for offices in London, in the city, I mean, London is also a big place, but in particular, we have our eyes on the square mile. So I think that is just a unique blend of everything into one. And we're obviously huge fans of the square mile. To me, it's a new era of offices. And when you have a new era, you have end of something else, right? So at that point, I kind of call it blind spot. It's going to feel negative, but I'm actually very positive about the future. We talk about the 24/7. Let's split that into two. The 24, actually, COVID, what COVID has done is increase the velocity of digitization for the everyday person and corporates, fact. So as a result of that, so we now have this hybrid model for commercial offices. And hybrid model for commercial office, so you have WFH partially, again, the operating leverage I talked about, you go into maybe ABC teams. What the Crossrail is going to do is it's going to exemplify that point. So my example is this. It's like some people will go to work at 8, they may leave at 2. And then some people might come to work at 3, and they may leave at 10. Then that 24 becomes more reality. But the thing is, at the same time, by leaving at 10, you're going to make the offerings for the evenings become more useful. So then the behavior change for the restaurant industry, F&B, and so that's going to change. So this is a 24 part that the Crossrail is going to do. The 7 will also be a subset of that as well. So I think when the Crossrail comes, coupled with digitization, coupled with WFH, this actually will happen. So COVID actually, I think, along with Crossrail, when it comes on, it's going to make this into reality. And that version of the square mile is going to be quite exciting. Right now, when you talk to the service providers who are probably working very hard to do a lot of surveys that they want to get out to clients. They're like, oh, we've spoken to 300 companies, 400 companies, 500 companies, and they're going to have a lot of data. They're going to have a lot of data about relating to, I'm talking about things related to office space. And I've had a number of them. They've called me to present. They want to tell me things. They want to, they want to work with us, blah blah. And these presentations are very good, very insightful. But this is what I tell them. I tell them, thank you so much. This is good stuff. But I very much hope all your findings now in 3-4 years time are 80% wrong. And the thing is, and I wonder if you may resonate with me. I tell them, like, right now most businesses, except for high tech, they have a top line problem, right? So naturally, when you have a top line problem, revenue problem, your focus is going to be reducing operating expense. And the easiest one, the most glaring one, is like office space. I'm at home, right? So I said, when you ask them of things related to office space, when you have a top line problem, you know the answer. It's very easy to have an answer, right? That is the answer. all the answers you'll have will be kind of negative towards the view of office. But I say to them, in 3 years' time, when they don't have a top line problem and you ask them the same questions, it's going to be a very different answer.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's one. And secondly, the second thing is, again, unless for new economy companies, when you talk to businesses now, none of them are really thinking about growth, about increasing headcount. And I tell them that's another problem, because like when you think about office space, you have space for this amount of people. And I said, when you're trying to make sure your cash flow break even, you're gonna very bottom line focus. You're not going to think about increasing your OPEX. But what I do think the future is going to be is that hybrid model. And in financial terms, I think good tenants are going to require more operating leverage, meaning if they're spending £1 million a year in office, let's say for, I don't know, 250 people currently, in future, they will spend maybe 1.1 million or 1 million, but that may need to house 400 people. So they need a higher return from that. But the thing is, the key thing is, what I don't think is, it's going to be 1 million being cut down to 300,000. When you read the media, they are actually, when you quantify what they're saying, is that they're saying that 1 million is going to be cut to 500,000. So I'm in a little bit different camp on that. And the final point, my view is, I think going forward, for the good occupiers, for the occupiers who are able, who are growing, they are going to have a condition precedent list. It's like, does this building, does it fit ESG? Is it BREEAM? I kind of think like, if the asset doesn't have those ESG type attributes, those buildings will underperform, because the tenants will not go with them. So that there may be a segregation of assets going forward.
Both buildings have been designed to have a more active relationship with the street and the public
Yes.
than is usual in city offices. Can you tell me your thinking around that and how that will work?
Absolutely. So from the get-go, when we hired, I think, 2 excellent architects, and what we typically do is, we don't believe, like for me, myself, and my colleagues, we don't believe there's a right or wrong way to anything. But I do one thing that we are in concert in is, every project may have different characters working on it. And we believe we have found the 2 very best teams for these 2 sites. And these sites are very different in size, even locations close, but then I feel like we have really picked the 2 very best teams for each respective site. I think that's for one. Secondly, we've always had a big focus on ESG. And the ESG that we think in is not just referring to corporates. For example, environment, social, and governance. Like in the ESG world, people think about corporate governance, but we also believe in self-governance. Okay, so I have a much broader term. So we set these key points to the design from the get-go, and combined with the fact that we are based in Hong Kong, so I have had the luxury to work in the United States, be in London, work in Hong Kong. I also worked in Tokyo, also lots of visits to mainland China and Shanghai and Beijing, where we're seeing unbelievable products around the world. But the square mile, what it is now, that the vision that Councillor Hayward, when he was head of the committee, laid out 24/7 London a couple of years back, and having worked with Wong and his team and the planners about the vision for this part of the cluster. What's really fascinating is, this part of the cluster before was mainly just 20 Fenchurch. So we're now complementing this part of the cluster, which I think is really, really important to complete the whole thing. So we are ESG from the get-go, and I felt like this part of the cluster, there is a Councillor Hayward 24/7 vision, and then there is a Gwen Richards, his thinking of how this cluster will look like. So we kind of took these 2 attributes along with our thinking, and created these two designs, which were conditionally approved right now. And to me, a lot of people focus on the height. A lot of people focus on what you look like. I have a taller building. We're not about that. To me, a good, successful offering is if my offering, my building, benefits my neighbors, and if my neighbor's building benefits me. I think the network effect is really important, which brings to the ground level, because we don't fly. Humanly, we walk. And I feel like there's a lot of focus on the skyline, but to me, I have a very big focus on the ground level. And during the 3 years prior to investing in the city, I came to London. I came to London many times, and I actually spent a lot of time walking during the weekends, not during the weekday. Weekends is not a lot of non-office traffic. I would see a lot of people, tourists, they walk on the street and they just keep walking. They're kind of walled off. They go to the booths to get a drink and they keep walking. And then, you have the Leadenhall Market, which I think is a gem. That's perhaps in some ways underutilized. So I always, when 70 Gracechurch came on for sale from Legal & General, I was visioning like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to bring, Leadenhall Market all the way out to Gracechurch and Fenchurch into the 21st century. So these things, start from the ground, and then, the way on top, that is a huge process, as you know, which goes from, lots of consultants self-auditing is a process to get to the look and feel of the building and the height. But the ground level to me is critical path. And I can just see that, on 70, we will have direct access into Leadenhall. And on 55, that part of the cluster, some people say it's the end. To me, it's kind of the beginning. You cross a river, and then Roman London, right? And we curved into it. We walked straight to 55. So 55 is kind of like the beginning of a cluster. It's like this pathfinder, and we're enabling lots of passageways to all directions. So I think that is very exciting. And we shifted both lobbies up to the first floor. And we want to give people more choices, and it's part of the social of the ESG. And with COVID now, the social distancing, we're going to give people walking in the square mile more choices of where they want to go, which direction, and so forth. I think that is very cool.
But I presume your thinking must be influenced by Hong Kong, where actually the lower parts of buildings are much more accessible to the general public than they tend to be in this country.
Yeah, in Hong Kong, that is very true. But the Hong Kong island, anyways, lots of our areas are connected by ground level, and of course also by some footpaths on top. But Hong Kong, we have a lot of people, but not we have 7.5 to 8 million people, but we are only built on 37.8% of the land. Yeah, so it's very dense. But I just feel like the 24/7 vision laid out. You need to enable. If you couple very good passageways and walk paths, that will make that much more interesting. It creates a lot of excitement and interesting thinking for people. And perhaps it's a good time to change the muscle memory. Thinking I'm going to just walk on Gracechurch. Now you can go all sorts of directions. So I think this kind of change, as my wife tells me, start now, start small. I hope by us doing this, maybe some other, my fellow neighbors will start doing that too. Then you're going to have a very strong network effect. And as you know, we also champion this bid, the Eastern Cluster bid, and we now have 50-20 stakeholders. That is very exciting. So I think when our 2 towers eventually are built, that we hope this bid will be something that's very interesting for tenants and occupiers and stakeholders in the City of London.
So what's your likely delivery plan for the new towers?
Yeah, for 55, we hope it will come online like 2026, 27 timeframe. And for 70, we hope like 2029, 30, 31. So, next 10 years, we'll be working ferociously hard on them. 70 may come on a little bit early, but we will see. But we really want to make sure we do a good job and do our job well. That's really important.
Yes, I suppose that's one of the things about tall buildings is that they take enough time to cover a number of shifts in the global economy.
Yes. I mean, as you know, Peter, these two buildings have taken years of work with lots and lots and lots of people. Some people just think, oh, there's a permission, you can do a building. But I keep thinking about the 2-3 years, the thousands of hours of all these excellent professionals from the United Kingdom working together cohesively to the final product, working with the planning offices. All that comes to mind, and it's exciting to, I kind of call that the back end. So we need to make the front end look really good. Yeah, so I think it's going to take time to build, but when we do it, it's going to be, they're both very high BREEAM scored buildings, and it's just, I think it's new era, and I think for occupiers going forward, the future, I think it's new era of office, but the future is hybrid, and I think these two towers cannot come at a better time for that aspect of the leasing market.
Boris Johnson's been talking about global Britain. Can you tell me what the view of London is like when seen from Hong Kong in the wake of both Brexit and COVID?
Right. I think factually, London, it is, there are a few financial centers in the world: New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong, to some extent Singapore, and also Shanghai is an emerging financial center. Out of all these, I think London has the longest history, right? It goes to the Roman times. So that's a fact. That in itself is very cool, right? That is very cool. And the fact that the square mile is actually where the Romans decided to have their marketplace, that's even cooler. So we know where 70, where Leadenhall Market is. That's how thousands of years ago, smart people decided this is the center for business. So we are merely, stakeholders of that area in this current time. So I think that alone is something that no one else can claim. Fact. I think for London, other attributes, the legal system in English, and it's a very fine legal system, is very good. Hong Kong's legal system is a sister or child of the UK system. And I think that's excellent. And I think global businesses will continue to utilize the UK legal system. And as you know, equity is ring-fenced by law. So lots of business deals get done in London. I think that will continue to be the case. I think UK also has a simplified tax system that's really important. And interestingly enough, I kind of feel like, China, Hong Kong, so Greater China, and UK, we're both entering new cycles. UK with the Brexit and what Greater China is going through is equally exciting. And the abundance of talent that the UK universities produce. One thing is not a shame, but it's a fact. Some of the very exciting emerging companies in UK, they have been acquired by some larger companies, new economy ones acquired by larger companies from like US, and they're growing gangbusters within those businesses. So one doesn't get a chance to really feel how fast a number of the new economy businesses are growing. But when I look at the square mile, the type of occupiers, life sciences, AI, fintech, one has to ask oneself, why are they in London? Because of all these things that we talked about and the talent. So I think London will be fine. I think London actually will likely thrive. There will be plus and minuses. The bad stuff we've read about for years now, since the Brexit in the news every day. But then we tend to focus on the positive. And I think Prime Minister has laid out a good campaign. I think the UK business stakeholders are resilient, and I think it's going to unleash a great deal of innovation. And for the square mile in particular, one thing that people have forgotten about is the Crossrail. because I guess it's been delayed, but that is a game changer, right? Traveling time getting cut by 65%. So that will bring people here. And finally, I think just like stock price follows earnings, good, like smart talent or people follow good jobs. And as long as London keep offering those, I think talent will want to be in London. And that's what makes that combustion so amazing.
Very nice to hear an optimistic view of the future of London. So, Patrick, thank you very much for your insights, and thank you very much for your support of London as a global centre.
You're welcome.